I'm Dave Snodgrass. Welcome to Table Ready Gaming. Today we have something fun because we have our channel's first collaboration. That's right, we're working with Brent over at Goober Town Hobby. I'll put a link to his channel down in the description and also a card up here, wherever it appears. Anyhow, we have sent each other mystery packages and we're gonna build whatever's inside. So I've not had a chance to look at this package or I have no idea what's in here. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up and get started. By the way, thanks for the smile, Brent. All right, here's our box. Let's just open it up and see what we got. So first, little note from Brent. Get that all in frame. Greetings. Please find enclosed your challenge model. Your instructions are simple. Modify, paint, and base this model in any way necessary, such that it could be used in your RPG campaigns. Give your character a backstory, include it in the video. Good luck and have fun. Goober Town Brent. Got some sweet Goober Town merch here. Nice bag. His logo. And inside we got a Goober Town mug. So we'll be sure to be drinking coffee or maybe painting. Wouldn't be offended if that was my new paintbrush water mug. Probably coffee. I need some more coffee mugs right now. All right, so the other thing we got in here that we really care about is our bag. And our surprise model is a Supreme Sorceress from Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I am super excited to be building this model. Dark Elves was actually one of my first armies I built when I was playing Warhammer Fantasy back in the day. Never got really far with them though, mainly because the troops was those old plastic spear elves and never really liked the look of them. So let's take a look at this lady and see what we got here. Okay, so first off, she's got Cold One Rider because we love ladies on dinosaurs. And then we're gonna have to put that piece right there. Like so. This requires some filing to get that to go. She sits on top, looking all spooky. And then this arm comes around and goes on there. So we're probably gonna do some sub-assembly and paint her. Oh, no, I take that back. She's got a sweet knife thing. So her arm just goes up like so. And slides in like such. There we go. So I started by cleaning the pewter miniature. I did this with my trusted metal files and an X-Acto knife. At this point, I'm looking to remove mold lines, flash, artifacts, and other things left over from the casting process. Next, I prepared this mini to be pinned. When assembling pewter models like this, especially larger models, you have to place wire pins in the joints. It's the only hope you have of having this miniature stay together on the game table. This is a skill I'm not particularly good at. When pinning a model, you can use brass rods. However, I find paper clips work just fine and are generally a fraction of the cost. Just make sure you have wire clippers for cutting paper clips. And don't use the hobby snippers you use to cut bits of sprues off of plastic kits. Okay, like I said, I'm not good at pinning minis, and I decided to try something else. So I had to undo my pinning work, and this means I had to remove the paper clips and scrape out the glue. Once I had this all removed, I dry fitted the pieces of this mini together. I wanted to make sure I had a flush fit, and no dried super glue was preventing the minis from fitting together perfectly. I then got out my bottle of Gorilla Glue. I've used this glue a lot before building terrain, but I've never used it assembling models. I proceeded to get one of my cheap paintbrushes and paint the Gorilla Glue into the sides of the miniature. Once that was done, I firmly pushed the minis together and returned my paintbrush to the water to clean it. This was a total experiment and I had no idea if it would work. All I knew at this point is that pinning the model was way beyond me. I then wrapped this little dino up in some rubber bands. Gorilla Glue does take time to dry, and I used a binder clip for even a more secure connection. While I was waiting for the glue to dry, I drafted up an apology letter to Brent, thanking him for the free model and apologizing for ruining it. Once I got done writing my letter, I came back to check on my miniature. Sadly, the Gorilla Glue didn't seem to hold up. But I wasn't quite ready to give up on this idea, as I couldn't find a stamp and I wasn't in the mood to run to the post office. Like so much in life, Gorilla Glue requires commitment, so I felt like a more liberal application was required. Also, by this point, I remembered that Gorilla Glue bonds with water and hardens when wet, so my paintbrush had turned into a dart as soon as I put it back into the water cup. I grabbed some Q-tips and started to apply more Gorilla Glue to the seam. As the glue started to dry, it started to foam out of the cracks between the two pieces. I kept swabbing away the foam with extra Q-tips. While I waited for the Gorilla Glue to fully set up, I turned to the rider to distract me from my growing concern. I tried to dry fit her arm to her elbow. This rider's arm is holding her staff at an angle into her cloak, and by this point I was starting to feel a challenge in Goober Town Challenge, another difficult piece to assemble. Okay, so the good news is, for this project, the Gorilla Glue worked like a charm. Not only was the dino secured, but when the glue foamed out, it actually filled the gaps between the two pieces. This is certainly a glue I need to experiment with more in the future. However, my frustration on this project was far from over. I could not get the top half of this rider to sit on the bottom of her waist. She just wasn't mounting. So I was absolutely cursing Brent's name by this point, but I decided, like so much in life, sometimes it's better to just take a break, think on the project, and come back to it. And that's exactly what I did. Okay, so the problem with this model is that it's pewter, and it is not cast from a flexible substance, and getting everything lined up correctly just wasn't working out. I wish someone just made models out of soft, bendy plastic. Oh wait, didn't I kickstart the First Bones Kickstarter? After digging through my bits box, I found a succubus miniature that I thought would make a great upper half for a dark elf sorceress, on a gold one. Also, I could use her bottom half for a unique looking sorceress on foot. So I cut this mini in half and proceeded to glue the two halves to the two separate minis together. At first, I kind of felt like I was cheating. I then accepted that this was cheating, but in the end, I was having more fun building this project, and at the end of the day, I feel creative problem solving is an important skill in life. And in this hobby, it should be a source of relaxation, not frustration. And if throwing out the rules is what you have to do to accomplish this, then so be it. Plus, now I'm getting 2 models instead of 1 out of this Goober Town challenge. Knowing that this was the direction I wanted to go, I decided to go back and finish cleaning the cold one. I used my X-Acto knife and a paper clip to finish scraping off the Gorilla Glue foam to make sure I had an easy bond. For the next step, I needed to attach the cold one to a base. To do this, I got out my pin vise and drilled a small hole in the base of the miniature. Unlike before, I could easily pin because I didn't have to worry about matching up holes perfectly. But I do think it's important to pin metal models to their bases. Again, I just used a paper clip. It's much cheaper than a brass rod. I then drilled out the corresponding hole in the base and glued the model to the base using Gorilla Glue, gel, super glue, and accelerant. Similar to attaching the cold one to the base, I also needed to attach the top of the torso to the new rider to the bottom half of the cold one rider. This process was very similar. Except for the bones plastic, it was very easy to drill, so I ran a much longer wire up the torso than necessary. Again, another benefit of using cheap material. I then dry fitted the 2 parts to make sure there wasn't a gap between the rider and the mount caused by the wire. Once I was sure of a smooth, clean fit, I glued the 2 pieces together. I also repeated a very similar process with my miniature that was on foot, again using super glue and a paper clip to make sure the bond was secure. I then glued my foot sorceress to a plastic lid to base. I've explained ad nauseum on this channel why I do this, but my main reason is storage. If you're curious about how I store my miniatures, watch the video here. Then jumping back to my mounted sorceress, I had to cover up the bare piece of pewter by sculpting on some cloth texture. I don't consider myself an expert sculptor, but I do know a few easy tricks to simulate cloth. However, this video is already too long to cover this in detail. So subscribe to my channel so you can see my future video on simple sculpting effects to use when converting minis. I also needed to fill a small gap on the waist of my foot sorceress. To better conceal my modest sculpting ability, I dug through my bits box for some appropriately elfy and evil magic bits. I like using these little plastic cases to organize for projects. You can also see my foot sorceress that I decided to cover her base with the leftover milliput to blend her existing bone space into the plastic circle. I'd never done this before and I was unsure how it would work. These two gals are subject to all kinds of experimentation. But if you've never watched his channel, Brent over at Goober Town Hobbies is all about learning and trying new techniques. He has some busted up Dark Elder warriors that are constantly the lab rats for new painting techniques. And I have to agree that this kind of experimentation is the fastest way to learn new skills in the hobby. If you haven't seen his channel, I strongly recommend you checking it out. I then primed the miniature with a zenithal highlight. I love this part of the assembly process because a good coat of primer really brings the miniatures together and lets you see how your different parts blend and gives you an idea what the finished model will look like. Or in this case, models. Alright, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump ahead a bit in the painting scheme. I do plan on releasing a more detailed video about how I painted these models and a more tutorial and easier consume style format. So if you want to learn the techniques I use on these models, and if you're interested in seeing that, please do subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified when my video goes live. But for now, here's the highlight reel. When it came time to paint a miniature, I generally like to start with the inside of the miniature and work my way outside. This isn't a hard, fast rule that I follow, more of just a general guideline. I like to think of it like this. What is the first thing this lady put on when she woke up? That is what gets painted first. And the last thing she picked up before walking out the door gets painted last. That means I generally start with the skin. Now lately, I've been on kind of a kick for trying out new wild skin tones. And I thought to myself, why not try to give these gals something kind of crazy? So I was sort of inspired by the World of Warcraft Night Elf. These minis are older sculpts, and the clothing these ladies are wearing is pretty cheesecakey already. So I'm not super worried about any sense of realism with this project. I first put down a layer of squid pink from Game Colors range. I then highlighted that pink with an off-white. For each layer, I added a little more white to the pink, making it lighter and lighter. I then started to paint higher and higher parts of the skin tone to simulate light hitting the model. Lastly, you should notice that I'm painting these two ladies at the same time, painting the same colors on each before jumping to a new color. This is what is called batch painting, and allows you to paint to dry on one miniature while you're working on another. You typically see this when painters are working on large armies or a unit of men, but you can certainly use this when working on a small party like a D&D adventuring party or a small war band. Since this video is showcasing Goober Town Hobbies, I would encourage you to check out Brent's video where he batch painted a crazy number of goblins and apparently didn't go insane. Once I was done highlighting, I washed the minis in a glaze made from Citadel's Druchii Violet and a mix Elathrium Medium. Purple is a great shadowing color for cool skin tones. I especially like to use it on undead creatures like vampires or evil magic casters. You can see how I paint rotting flesh using the Druchii Violet in the video above. This glaze will add shadow to the recesses of the mini and make the details really start to pop. However, since these minis are primarily for the tabletop, I personally like to leave the highlights a bit extreme. I think this makes the miniature look better when viewed at a distance. I then decided to give these ladies some green hair to continue with the World of Warcraft inspired paint scheme. This was done in a similar way as the skin, except adding a lighter shade of green yellow rather than white. Yellow-green is a great color for highlighting green. Okay, so let's talk about that cold one she's writing. I'm trying to take my painting to the next level, and the only way I can do that is by leaving my comfort zone. Since these ladies have already been heavily inspired by World of Warcraft, Why not the cold one? I thought I'd use this image up here, but I'm a little worried that the scheme might be too much going on for the model. Anyhow, let me know what you think in the comments below. So I started by painting the cold one a deep blue. I then took the same off-white I've been using and started painting the belly of the cold one. I wanted there to be a rough transition between the blue and the white, so I made sure the brush was always moving up whenever possible to get the white lines between the blue and the white. I then went back and highlighted the cold one with a more tealish paint, and then painted in little green circle blobs followed by little yellow blobs and my green blobs. When that was done, I washed the entire cold one in a dark blue from Citadel. I was a little worried that this would muck up the yellow and the green, but luckily it didn't. Plus, I personally really like that light blue underbelly the Dino got. For my metallics, I used Scale 75's paint range. If you're looking for a metallic paint range, this is one of the best paint sets I use for metallics. One trick though to get the most out of any metallic paint range is to start with a black or a dark color as your undercoat. This really makes the metal paint pop. So if you've primed it with a lighter color, I would strongly recommend painting over the primer before painting a dark metal. I then washed the metallics with Secret Weapons Armor Wash. This is one of my favorite ways to knock out metallics quickly and easily, as it adds great shadows effects to gold and a lovely grunge, well-oiled look to silver metals. I also decided to paint her saddle blanket yellow. I know yellow is one of those colors that wargamers fear, because traditionally it isn't made with a decent pigment for good coverage. The trick to a strong yellow is to paint it gradually in thin layers. As you can see here, my first layer of yellow isn't even remotely covering that black undercoat. Another trick is to first paint the yellow area a light brown and build up from there. Whatever method you use, don't despair, just keep at it and build that yellow color up in thin layers, letting the paint dry completely between layers. Once you have your yellow built up to a nice flat color, try using a soft brown to shadow it. I personally enjoy using GW's Sepia Wash or Army Painter's Soft Tone. Soft Tone is what I'm using here. So I wrapped her up by picking out details. For example, also applied a nice blend on the rider's horns, but I'll cover that more in detail in a future video. I could probably dedicate an entire video to painting claws, horns, and teeth. Anyhow, I wrapped these minis up by finishing them with my bulletproof miniature finishing technique, linked here, and basing them. There, they're all done. Now for the last part of my Goober Town challenge. Brent asked me to come up with a backstory for these characters for use in my D&D campaign. I feel like a lot of players like to think about a character and then try to find the perfect miniature to match that. Personally, I sometimes find it easier to just find a kick-ass miniature that you're excited to build and then come up with a story around that miniature. That's pretty much how all the villains in my games come to life. And that's 100% the case with these two minis. Their story kind of developed in front of me while I was building them. Ninesh and Norave are twin full-blood elves and are certainly a miracle in the world. Because of this, they consider themselves destined for greatness and have difficulty dealing with the curse of mortality that now afflicts all elvenkind since the Sundering. While some of their more foolish elven brethren simply accept their new role in the world, since the fall of the Alarian kingdoms, Ninesh and Norave seek to recover some of its former glory. This has led them to make dark pacts that others of their kind wouldn't even harbor in the darkest parts of their mind. Norave and Ninesh have actually openly invited a Neverborn to enter from beyond the veil and possess their bodies. Normally, this ritual would cost Norave and Ninesh their free will, but they were able to trick the Neverborn by mixing their twin blood during the summoning ritual, splitting the Neverborn's consciousness between Norave and Ninesh. While both show mutation caused by the Neverborn they now harbor in their bodies, they both benefit from the newfound immortality, strength, and strong connection to the ether. Thinking that they have found the cure to their people's ailment, and wishing to gift immortality onto other elves, they search populated cities, abducting pairs of elves and half-elves with strong shared bloodlines to perform a summoning ritual. While most of their victims fall to madness and mutation, they see this as a necessary cost to pay for the return of the Alarian kingdoms and its rightful rule. And those who successfully survive the ritual tend to become powerful followers indeed. I think this idea of a shared bloodline could really make these two have fun in-game mechanics as well. Something like demonically bound bloodline for the rule, where every time one of these characters is dropped to 0 hit points, instead of being removed, her sister's hit points are instead cut in half, and then the two share the remaining hit points. I think this could be really powerful if I include things like healing potions or magic items that grant temporary hit points. Well, I sure enjoyed making this video, and if you're from Goober Town Hobbies, welcome to Table Ready Gaming. This is a channel that is dedicated to helping gamers get their games on the table even faster. I sure hope you stick around and subscribe. Now, if you've never heard of Goober Town Hobbies, I strongly recommend checking out Brent's channel. Here's a link to 2 of my favorite videos. This one, he saves an old gaming table from the dump, and on this one, he shows you how to make your own contrast paints. Both are really cool. Anyhow, I'm Dave Snodgrass, this is Table Ready Gaming, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much for watching.